welcome back to Chip in a Chair, your one-stop spot for everything poker. Today, my little railbirds, I want to talk with you about my favorite little Canadian. No, I don't mean Dave Grohl. Not sure if he is Canadian. Might be. No, I'm talking about poker. And in talking about poker, I'm talking about the one D-Negs. The only Kid Poker. That's right, Daniel Negreanu, everybody. And he is one of the greats of our time. Definitely one of the greats of my time. Now, before I get into why I feel that he is one of the greatest, I want to roll back a little bit of the backstory of this individual, because I like backstories. I like learning things about the people, and I wanted to pass this along before we get into why he is one of the greatest players. Negreanu is Romanian, and his parents actually immigrated from Romania about 7 years before he was born. Something like that. He was about 7 years before he was born. They originally had the plan to move to the United States, but ended up settling in Canada instead, for whatever reason. And Negreanu, actually, he recounts this story later, but apparently he knew that at a young age he wanted to be rich, so much to the point that when he was about 4 years old, he told his mom he was going to build a house out of popsicle sticks and move to California. Kids do have one hell of an imagination. I know my 4-year-old daughter does. But it's fun. Well, like a lot of us poker players, Negreanu ended up, being kind of a rebellious kid, I'm sure. There was reports, that his parents had gotten of his poor manners and behavioral issues in school. I don't know exactly what those were, and I'm not going to speculate as to what they were. But suffice to say is what it is. Well, Negreanu ends up picking up the game snooker. Now, snooker is it's a version of billiards, and he actually initially wanted to become a professional player. He thought that's how he was going to make it big originally. That's what his plan was. So he started going around to different snooker halls and pool halls, whatever you wish, however you want to put them, and he was playing. Well, we fast forward to about 15 when he learns poker. Okay? Now, like the rest of us, when poker hits you, it hits hard. It grabs a hold of you and it doesn't let go, and it didn't for him either. He fell in love with the game. He fell in love with the mechanics of the game. He fell in love with all portions of it. And so he started going around and sneaking into casinos when he could to play, and playing at different backroom games, wherever he could. As well as still hustling in snooker and sports betting. And he was building up a bankroll, and all of this really built into a desire to live the life of a professional gambler. Also, in doing so, it caused his career, it's not his career, but it caused his academic, scholastic area to suffer. All the way to the point that he ended up being credits shy to graduate. So he ends up dropping out of high school. Now, I will say that I do know this of him. That is one of those things he's not 100% proud of. He's not proud that he dropped out of high school at that point. I don't know what it was he was going through or anything. I'm not going to sit here and speculate as to what drove him to that decision. I do know that education for him is a very important thing, and we all do things that we're not proud of in our past. That's one of those things in his past he's not necessarily proud of. He doesn't advocate, hey, drop out of school and just go play poker. That's not where he's at. That's not what that's not what he's doing. It's one of those, do as I say, not as I do type of things. So after dropping out of school and deciding to pursue his professional gambling career, while traveling around these little poker rooms and stuff like that, he ends up meeting up with Evelyn Eng, who is another phenomenal poker player. I will talk about her as well as others when I do my Women in Poker series, which is coming up soon. They ended up dating for a little while and would go around playing, and he built up himself a bankroll. So he finally reaches the point that he decides now's the time. Packs up, takes his money, and rolls himself all the way out to lovely Las Vegas. At 22, 1996, he's in Vegas. Unfortunately, that dream didn't go the way he planned. He ended up losing everything and going bust, and at that point he ended up having to tuck his tail and go all the way back to Canada. He lost his bankroll. He lost the money that he had. All of it. Had to take himself back to Canada and start over. And start over he did. He went back and rebuilt his bankroll. He didn't give up. And just 2 years later, he comes back on a nice little fighting stance and wins his first WSOP bracelet. That's right. 96 in Vegas, he went bust. 98, he wins his first bracelet. So, see what happens when you don't give up? That's only the first part of it. He has gone on to actually win 6 WSOP bracelets. Again, I don't know when you're watching this, so some of these numbers are going to change based on when you see this video. So, at the moment, he has 6 WSOP bracelets. Okay? What that also leads down to is he has about 148 caches in WSOP events. He has, I think it's 45 final tables in the WSOP, events. And he actually has done something that no other player has within the WSOP. Negreanu is the only one so far to actually attain the WSOP Player of the Year twice. In 2004 and 2013, the WSOP honored him with Player of the Year. And he's the only player to date that has, to date when I filmed this, that has actually done that. He is also, in reference to the WSOP, the only player to have played in all 3 bracelet locations. Let me finish this. All 3 bracelet locations, which is Las Vegas, Europe, and Asia Pacific. Okay? Now, those 3 places are where they have bracelet events. And what makes it unique is he not only played in those and made it to the final table in each of those, but he is also the only one to have actually won a bracelet at all 3 locations. Pretty impressive. He also plays in the WPT, and at the time of this, he has 2 WPT titles and 9 final tables and 24 caches. I know just recently, as in recently, March 6, 2023, he actually played in a $10,500 no-limit hold'em tournament in Vegas and placed 5th place in that. So he's still on a roll of, bringing in the money and getting closer and closer to wins. And while the main event final table has eluded him, he has not yet won a main event title. I know it's coming, but it's tougher and tougher each year as the field goes on. At this point, Negreanu is one of the top tournament earners ever. He's got about, $50 million in winnings, So he's definitely up there. And, somebody once asked him, hey, how can you handle these $1 million swings, this, that, and the other? And he looks at it quite simply. It's the nature of the game. Quite frankly, I can afford it, But his point to that is if you can't afford it, don't do it. If you can't afford that big swing and lose $3,000 in a hand, you shouldn't be in that game. Negreanu is only in games that he knows he can afford to lose. If he loses, he's not saying he's planning on losing, but that's where he's at. Now, one of the other things I love about watching Negreanu play, and this is one of the other reasons why I feel that he is one of the greatest of our time. Okay, Negreanu does the way he does it, okay? He doesn't do something that's completely new to poker. People have been putting people on hands left and right. But he basically pulls out the Babe Ruth of this. If you all remember Babe Ruth doing the famous pointing before he swung his bat, showing everybody what he was going to do. Well, Negreanu is basically the Babe Ruth of poker. Okay? He'll sit there at a table, and he'll talk you through what's going on in his head as to break it down into where he thinks your range is at and where he thinks you're at. Now, here's the beauty of this, okay? One, it's nothing new. Poker players do that a lot. But by doing it out loud, it gives him an advantage. See, people, when they're holding something that they don't want anybody to know about, and you start honing in on what that might be, they start getting nervous. They start twitching. So while he's sitting here rolling through saying, well, you bet here and then you check there, I think you might be bluffing. I think you might have something completely whiffed, an air ball of blah, blah, blah. And if you are particularly in that air ball and you hear him talking about it, it's going to get you. You're going to start thinking, oh, shit, oh, no, he can see through it. How do I not let him know that he's right? And I know the power of this. One time I was sitting at the Borgata and a guy across the table, bet into me. And I looked back and I was just playing around. I didn't do any math or any calculations. I was just playing around. And I was like, oh, you're pretty strong there with your Jack 7. Well, flop came out with a Jack in it and all other garbage as any other. But he continued to check down the entire way. And at the end, he looked back at me and he says, I couldn't bet any more into you because you called my hand. And he turns over a Jack 7. Now, again, I didn't sit there and deduce and go, okay, well, he's playing this, that, and the other. I literally just pulled a hand out of the air and said, hey, that's what it was at. And it shocked him to the point that he couldn't play that hand. So with the fact of Negreanu being able to sit there in a hand and talk you through it and then say, hey, I think you're right around this. Now, this makes sense. This is what it seems like you have. And usually he's pretty close. He doesn't always get it right, but he's pretty close enough that he can watch your reactions, and then from your reactions, really narrow it down even more. And I love that. I love that about Negreanu. I love watching him do it because it's great to actually see that process going through. And it's fun watching the other people like squirm when he's sitting there going through and like, oh no, is he going to get it? It's fun. And Negreanu outside of poker, he's had some times where he's done some cameo appearances in movies. Matter of fact, he was in one of the Wolverine movies. He's done some guest spots as a poker player on some TV shows and stuff like that. He's keeping himself busy. But like I said, he's definitely one of the greats of our time. I enjoy watching him play. And I look at it this way. One of the biggest things that I think anybody can learn from Negreanu is, quite simply, you can go bust and you can lose everything. But if you don't give up, success can find you.